Hi, Emel. Hello.
Hi Dana, how are you?
Freezing. How are you?
أنا ضايعة
ليه بقى؟
ضايعة
ليه؟
مش فاهمة اللي بيجرالي.
ليه؟
أنا traumatized من وقت عملية جوزي and I cannot get my things around yet.
Are you back?
قلتها في كل حاجة. Yes, I'm back in Egypt.
Okay, طيب. And how's he doing?
He's recovering. He's getting better الحمد لله يعني.
Okay.
بس أنا اللي مش كويسة. أنا اللي مش كويسة.
Eh,
ف
طب
I'm traumatized والورك اوت بعمله هايل. بس
okay.
أنا لغاية دلوقتي I
Hmm.
cannot cry.
Are you holding it intentionally?
No مش قصدي بس it's there. It's buckled up on me. لسه مش عارف يعني حتى هي يعني I'm hoping I'm in day 25 ولسه tears مش عارفة امتى هينزلوا.
Don't
Probably I
think
have
don't
to repeat it.
oh, don't think about it and don't think that I'm not. Don't give it focus because that can create a blockage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Angie.
Okay.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
Good. How about you?
Good,
Not
thank
too bad,
you.
alhamdulillah.
Good, good, good.
Um, just a heads up, I may not complete the whole call because my bedtime is I sleep quite early.
I know it. So it's 9 p.m. عندك right now, right? Yeah.
بالظبط بس I was like لا I'll attend for as long as I can يعني I don't want to keep missing يعني and going back to the recording.
Yeah. And this is a good book. This is a good book.
Yes,
This
it
is a good
is.
discussion. Let's wait for the rest of the ladies. Let me see راحوا فين. Okay. Doesn't look like anybody's lost. Basma's here. Hi, Basma. Hi. All right, hi Vesma, let's get started. It is 7:01. I want to start with a couple of just logistics. If you notice in the group under events, I've shuffled a couple things around, mainly the times. So I'm leaving for Tokyo next week. So next week's class, because I'm traveling on a Monday, I've switched it to Sunday at 5 p.m. So our next class is not Monday, but Sunday at 5 p.m. It's in events. And then the week after that, when I will be in Tokyo, our classes will be at 1 p.m. Cairo. This also works out well for those of you in Cairo anyway, because of Ramadan. We wouldn't have been able to really do a 7 p.m. class in all cases. So it will be 1 p.m. Cairo until I return. The last thing is, I've decided that next week, I will not be releasing a new module. We'll keep next week sort of as an integration slash catch-up week for anybody who needs it. So I won't be releasing anything new next week. We'll just do the call on relationships just to wrap that up. But I won't release anything new for you to do. And then the week after will be the first week of spirituality, and I'll release something new for that. All right. We can use next week as an opportunity for, catching up, lots of questions on the group. A lot of you have been messaging me privately with things you're either not understanding or things that you need further elaboration on. So we can take that opportunity next week to do that since I won't be giving you anything different to add on or to do. All right. Hi, Umneya. Hi, Sandra. Basma, on the topic of March, are the books listed in the updated calendar? Yes, they are. Yep. March, first book for March is East of Eden, which is a long one. If you haven't started, start. That's on March 3rd. Yeah, we were. This is the only long one, Tess of the D'Urbervilles. When we shifted the whole schedule, we ended up with these long ones, but they're really worth it. Really, really, I mean, great books, especially Tess of the D'Urbervilles. And Tess is a bit of an easier read than East of Eden, but you'll get through it. All right, let's get started. Edna, Edna, Edna. Where do we start with Edna? So this book, Kate Chopin was actually considered one of the first feminist writers. And this was published 1899. So sort of she was doing, it was a commentary, on Victorian society and the societal norms and, what women could and couldn't do. And it was really considered, if you think about it, 1899, a really controversial book for that time. Let's just get into it. Who thinks Edna was justified in anything that she's done? Any thoughts, ladies? This obviously, because also it's our first literature book, there's lots of ways to look at the book. We can look at there's the language, there's the metaphors, there's the analogies, there's all sorts of things. But I think for us as women, the easiest and most interesting way to approach it is just to look at her as a woman that we can relate to, stuck in her role, potentially unable to be fulfilled in her traditional role, trying to find a way out. And it's this constant conflict, which I think it's universal and it's timeless. This conflict between what we consider to be ideal and what is actually real. And that conflict can be an inner conflict within ourselves, and can be an actual conflict between us and something outside of ourselves. And Edna was all of those things. She went through all of it. She ran the gamut from inner turmoil, trying to figure out who she is, trying to go like, who am I? Like, this was her question, like self-identity, self-discovery. There's the question of women, what's the role of women? The question of sexual liberation, right? And then just her, and in order for herself to figure all that out about herself, she had to she kept butting heads with society, with what society said is acceptable, what's not acceptable. So that's still ongoing. I mean, you probably could just change the setting and the dress code in this story, and you could probably still set this story in modern day times. I don't think we solved any of these issues, right? I don't think we've found the answers to any of this, the continuous inner turmoil, inner conflict. So let me know, like, what were your initial reactions to her? Besma, serious identity crisis. Yeah. Yes, she really was. Hi, May. Hi, Layla. What was your initial reaction to her?
Sometimes I felt like she needed, it's like she starts fighting, but then she pulls back. She starts pushing boundaries and then she pulls back. Sometimes it's kind of, it's like you want to shake her and tell her, like, continue, push.
Yeah, yeah. But why do you think she does that?
I mean, obviously she's shackled. It's society is stronger than her desire to break free.
Yeah. There's a lot of she stood to lose a lot as she was going through this inner turmoil, serious identity crisis. I think it would be scary for to come up against something that you believe is who you truly are, but at the same time, you're faced with the fact that who you believe you truly are will never be accepted. not by your husband, not by your kids, not by society. And that maybe that's what pulls her back a bit. What do you ladies think? Don't forget the era she was living in, right? This Victorian era. You know, you have her antithesis, which is Adele, right? Who's like the perfect woman, you know, embodying all the feminine qualities. She is the perfect wife. She is the perfect mother. She is the perfect hostess. She is literally what the quintessential Victorian woman was expected to be. She embodied all of that. And then you have Edna on the other side. She starts to hate entertaining. She starts to, you know, hate on her husband. She realizes she never felt anything for him. She's not that attached to her kids, not really. You know, starts to experience, you know, this liberation, sexual liberation. It's not very clear whether she actually, you know, allowed herself like a complete sexual liberation, or it's just the pecks and the few kisses we read about. But even that, I mean, was considered completely against the norm. And she wasn't a fully independent woman, let's say financially, or in any way where she could say, right, I can just let go of all of this and I can still be able to maintain my life and I don't need to depend on anyone. She wasn't actually that independent. So for me, sometimes I feel like her awakening happened too fast. Like is suddenly she went from the perfect wife and mom, and then she goes off to summer. And then all of a sudden she takes, you know, she goes for a swim and then she wakes up and she's all of a sudden ready to make a change. It was a little bit too drastic for me. I've always felt that whenever I read this book. But I mean, that's just how the author, you know, took us through that journey. But I think the fact that maybe because she went too fast, you know, when you sometimes make really fast decisions and then you have to backtrack a bit, that could be one of the reasons. Ladies who just joined us, we're talking about first impressions, initial reactions to Edna and her journey. Who would like to share their thoughts? Anything about Edna. There's no right or wrong, ladies. This is not a literature class. We're just here to share our ideas, to share our thoughts, to share, you know, how we evolved or how the book touched us potentially, how it might have affected you or not.
I think it's quite interesting how relevant it still is.
Mm.
And you could have, like you said, I mean, you know, give her a different name, put her in, you know, in our century, in our society. So much of it translates, I think, which is sad, actually, which is quite sad.
So much of it translates, but it's sad. You mean that as women, we're still going through the same struggle that, you know, all this time, it's the same questions, it's the same issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely that's still sad. But I think inner turmoil, just in general, I think that's a just in human nature. I think even if you have discovered or you don't feel like you have the pressure, any of the pressures that Edna had as a woman, and you're able to live your life the way you want in society, that doesn't mean you don't have inner struggle.
Oh, of course, yeah, but I mean, the level of the struggle and the different aspects of the struggle
Yeah.
are different from one person to the next, from one era to the next, from one culture to the next.
Yeah. How would you, for me, when I try to compare it to sort of now, it feels like Edna went through, you know, when you do personal development work in this age of ours, and they call it you're doing the work. You're doing the
Mhm.
work on yourself. It feels like Edna was maybe one of the, her character is one of the first. There's other characters in literature who do this as well, but they're sort of the first explorations of doing the work, to really figure out who you are and not just who society tells you think you should be. Emil, the question that I can't answer, how did this awakening help her, whether it was beneficial for her life to go through this awakening? What do you think? There's no right or wrong. What do you think, Emma? Like when you just
I don't know.
That's a great question.
I don't know. It's like it's just like I posed this like maybe she shouldn't have gone through all of this awakening experience. Her life would have been much easier. Now she woke up and was like she didn't do anything.
Right. Do you think in general, and maybe for Edna in particular, had she just not acted up on any of her impulses, that might have been better for her?
I mean, what was the benefit when she acted?
Well, according to her, the benefit was she finally got to understand who she was. She was in complete control of herself. So she let go of anything that was tying her down. She let go of being controlled by her husband or even by Robert or anyone. She was living her life day to day according to her desires. She even got rid of the help at home. She got rid of the big house. She simplified her life to literally bring it down to the basics that represented her and created this little life for herself that was hers and hers only. That's what she got out of it.
But then she drowns herself.
Yeah.
And that's
exactly.
Yeah.
That's it's almost frustrating because it's almost like she didn't learn anything. It's almost like it was what everything she did, if this is how she chooses to end things, it almost makes it not worth it.
You think it's not worth it, or potentially this was her final act of defiance? If I'm not going to be able to live it this way, because what were her options? To go back and maybe live in disgrace, maybe be, ostracized by her society. I mean, if we were to say she had options, right? Go back and revert and go back to being a dutiful wife, forget her little awakening experience, lesson learned. Okay, not going to work. It's not going to fit in this society. Let me go back and be the dutiful wife. Or go back and completely be ostracized by society because she's going to leave her husband. She's going to continue to live alone. It might be Robert, it might be somebody else afterwards. She's not going to be integrated the same way that she was before. And maybe her third option was like, you know what? Why am I even trying to think of a way to go back to this society and fit in any way? I'm going to have my ending my way. And here's my final act of defiance. Nobody can tell me what to do. Maybe. I mean, there's so many millions of interpretations to this ending, but yeah, was it worth it? Layla, she says, I felt that she was a bit lost, spoiled, and then remembered the era it was written in. Then I was angry. She felt indifferent to her kids. At the end, I felt sad for her. Yeah. Why did you feel sad for her, Layla? Oh, Layla left. Sandra, go ahead.
For me, I had mixed feelings about it as well.
Mm.
So at the beginning, I was like feeling sorry for her, and I was like, I like the changes that she did, whether to the house or the idea I felt like, like the adding flowers, like, oh, okay, so it's a thing that, like, I was reading another book, and it had another thing about adding flower when they felt in tune when they're with themselves. So that was one thing. And then I felt actually the husband wasn't um I know that I mean, he wasn't in love with him, but I mean, he wasn't that bad. I mean, he did try to go to the doctor, and he did try to give her some space, and he didn't push anything. So I felt like it was just a phase in her life, and then things would have been good again if she was just patient, and she would just, like, let it go. Maybe with that awakening, she was confused about other things. But what I noticed is when she was actually not on autopilot anymore, and she started to feel things, her relationship with the kids actually was better. When she went to visit them at the farm in
Yeah.
the countryside, she was having fun with the kids. So I felt maybe the author didn't want to do it like, the traditional happy ending kind of thing. But for me, I would have wished she would have stayed with the kids. I felt like she's not a bad mother. She was just not focusing, or she was just again on autopilot. Like she wasn't feeling anything, whether with her husband or the kids or with herself. But when she started to feel, things felt a little bit different than at that part of the book. The other thing about I actually the character that I liked was the pianist. I like
Yes.
that lady.
Yeah. So she was
Um,
somebody who really was living her life her way.
the pianist.
Yeah.
She was, but I mean, like, I like the character that they, like, they don't care about what other people think, or I like that. I like that part about that lady. Like, I mean, like, she was just, like, creating music. She was creative in her own way. The way of she was dressed. She didn't even care, like, to say hi to the audience or anything like that. She was just, like, that's it. She's being herself. But with Edna, she was confused. But and I don't know. I would like to think that she wasn't, like, she didn't drown herself intentionally. I don't know. Maybe I like to look at it in, like, in a positive way. So I thought maybe she just went for a swim, and she just went too far. That's it.
That's the other question also. Did she know she was going to go in and drown herself? Did she even go back to Grand Isle with that intention? Or did she just literally just think of it on the spot? Um, I love Mademoiselle Reese, I don't know how to pronounce her name, the pianist. The reason though that she was allowed to dress funny and act out of the societal norms, I believe, is because she was already single. So just the fact that she wasn't married already sort of cast her in a separate mold. Well, then she could just go ahead and do whatever she wants because she doesn't she's not married. There's no man in her life. She doesn't have to report to anyone anyway. She is her foundation is very different than the rest of the women there. And nobody really, even though they were very aware of her quirks, of, things that would be, if any of the other ladies had behaved the way she does, would be considered downright rude. But it was acceptable because already she was an outcast because she was single. I think all of these rules apply to the married women only. I think
Yeah.
as long as you're single and for whatever reason that happens, you're a spinster, you never got married, you're free to do what you want. It's only the ones who go down the traditional route and get married who then have to follow all the rules that fall under that category.
Yeah, that's true.
But you guys
I
remember,
like that when she stopped seeing people on Tuesdays. I like that part because as I mentioned last week, I could relate to that. Like, it is draining sometimes. Like, like you have
yeah.
to focus on other things, and this is the first thing for me that I would also cut. But I agree with Adele, like about like think of the children. Like for me, like I was like inside, I was repeating it as well. Like think of the children.
But do you remember the sentence that she was repeated a couple of times in the book where she says, I would do anything for
Yeah,
my
I would
children. I think
accept
even like
giving them.
even give my life, but not give myself.
No, I
So
don't. I think it's just like whatever. It's all the same, but this
she
is
would
just
she
me.
would do anything for them. So she loves them, you know. When she says things like that, you feel like her love, like it's a very deep mother's love, but there's a limit. If it comes to the point where I have to compromise who I really am. I mean, she didn't think this before she had her awakening, obviously, right? But as she was coming into her true self, she realized that as a mother, her love for her children is has no limit. Like it has no limits, but it has this one little, "Hmm, I'm not going to give up who I am for them, even though I will do
But
everything."
no one asked her to give up herself. I mean, like, I don't know
But
why she
what
put
do you
it,
but how do you think that's related to the ending?
but that's the thing. I don't think it should be related to the ending. Like, I mean, even now as mothers, I mean, we love our children and everything, but I mean, like, I'm still myself. But I mean, what the kids didn't ask her to give up anything. Like, it's all in her head.
It potentially, but I mean, we also have 100 years on her, right? 100 years of women being able to stand up for themselves and think for themselves and decide for themselves. I think at some level we can't really, as much as we can relate to her, we can't actually imagine not being able at all to say even, when she just stopped seeing guests once a week. Like she just didn't want it. She was tired. Imagine having to host every single Tuesday. I don't think we can even imagine that even something as simple as saying, I don't feel like hosting people in my home every single week, that was something unimaginable back then
Yeah.
for a woman to say. So I think what happens at the end is, again, we don't know what's going on in her head, but if her options were to go back as a dutiful wife, she knew that that would be betraying her newly discovered self. And so she would go back to being the dutiful wife, back to being, the proper mother, but that's not really who she was. And then that would mean that she's a mother who's not really being honest to herself. So the role of being a mother was going to compromise who she became.
Hmm?
So I think that's why I feel that sentence, that's
Yeah,
how it
Ahmed.
applies. She cannot be a mother anymore, knowing what she knows about herself. And so,
Which is what? Like, what did she discover? It was, yeah, I mean, and we live and we discover things and things change. And,
yeah,
like if I just, like act on the first impulse that I have or something like that, like, I mean, like what we come of, everything that we know of, so I do know that it was 100 years old, I mean, book, but I mean, even now we cannot do this.
you
We
can't do
cannot just,
what?
like just open the door and then, like just take another house and move out and, like, and not look back or just leave the kids with the grandma. Like, I mean, like even now it's not that, it's not something that like you would do like that, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's still, we're being very progressive and I mean, things are moving really fast but still these stories, I know they happen, but I mean, like it's you would still think it's too soon and it should take, like some time that, like I don't know, maybe I don't know.
Yeah. I think she just didn't give herself enough time to, like you said, sort of to see the full arc of this experience.
Yeah, that's
Like,
what I
okay,
mean. Yes.
yeah, like fine. I think for her, what she gained, I think, was the love, right? It was about the romance. She was not married to a man that she was in love with, believing that that was okay, and not really believing that love was something until she actually experienced it. But I think for her, the catalyst for all this was the fact that you could love and be loved so intensely. You know, you don't have to have this uh like a flatline relationship with your husband. And he was a good husband, but he also treated her like an object in a sense. I mean, he was
Yeah.
good in that he provided for her. He was going to let her renovate the house. He never, he wasn't stingy. He was good with her financially. But when you really look at the way and read about how he thought about her, she was like the house, like an extension of the house. So imagine you're living with somebody like that who doesn't really is not curious about you, not curious. There's no affection, is not interested to talk to you or have conversations with you. It's all a matter of, just very, logistical. You have your Tuesday visits, we have the dinner parties, you take care of the staff, and then you find somebody who just wants to hear you talk.
But Yudana, I feel that she didn't take enough time to really come to terms. Everything happened very quickly. She didn't give herself enough time to actually understand the changes she was going through. She didn't push back enough. And she didn't give him accordingly, even she didn't give him enough time to understand how to deal with her newfound sense of self. And that's why I feel that at times, I don't know, one of the ladies said, it's almost like she's selfish, irresponsible. It's like she wanted everything then and there. Even these days, even with having 100+ years, okay, so I'm not a mom, but I can imagine anyone, any mother going through like the thinking, being an independent woman and then becoming a wife and then becoming a mother and being expected to give her whole self to her kids, and then realizing that I can still do that, but still be myself. I can love them wholeheartedly and still be myself. It's a process. Here, she tried to rush through everything. I don't think the novel even covers an entire year of her life.
No, no, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
You don't even get to the next summer. No.
Exactly. So I feel, that's why I feel, the last act for me wasn't really a sense of defiance or her final thing. I feel a petulant child. She didn't get what she wanted right away. فخلاص I'm gonna throw the towel in.
It could be. It could be. I definitely feel like I told you from the very beginning of the journey, I feel like it's like all of a sudden she's starting to have this awakening. But when you think about it, how was her husband going to have time to adjust when his wife, for lack of a better word, was having an affair? At that time, like even in this day and age, it wouldn't fly, right? No man is gonna adjust. So maybe that was one of the reasons. Like she knew there was no way, no matter how mature he was or understanding, and patient as he had been, was he going to accept something like that? Because she
But then
didn't
she decided
evolve.
for him.
But she didn't accept her role in that برضو. She didn't accept her part in that.
Oh no,
So
there was no, what do you call it? There's no guilt on her part. There was no,
But there was no accountability. Forget
no
the guilt. I don't have a
accountability.
problem with no guilt, but there was no accountability.
Yeah.
And she decided for her husband. Most of the things, like she decided for him. She didn't even, like, there was no conversation actually. And then, like they decided on something, or she does have a reason for her to give up. I mean, we didn't see the husband that much in the story, so I don't know. Like, all we know is her feeling about few things, but I mean, not There was no dialogue or anything. Even when at the summer place, he did actually wait for her like until she slept, so he would go back to sleep. Like, I mean, there is something, like even between the lines that he does care. Yes, he's trying to act as tough and say, now you when I say you go to sleep, you go on and this. But I mean, that was 100 years ago, so I guess this language was okay. But I mean, but he did care. He did stay up. That's another thing. And another thing is like with Robert, I mean, like he didn't even get a chance to actually know what life will be with him, or like he could be it could be exactly the same. You know what I mean? Like it was just, it's all again in her head that she believed that things might be like great and amazing, but there was no real life. It was just a summer fling.
Well, this is it. This is the conflict between this ideal. She had this ideal in her head. The conflict between that and the reality were two different things. The reality was, that there was just an infatuation between the two of them. There isn't even the potential of any kind of future. But in her mind, the romance and her the state of mind that she was in just created this ideal, which was incredibly far removed from reality, but she was striving for that ideal, that complete oneness with just herself, her feelings, her thoughts, her desires, and nobody else. And then when you look at it in terms of what in literature, typically when an author brings in the elements of nature, this is symbolic of becoming one with yourself. If you think about it, how good do you feel when you're out in true nature, when you're near the sea, when you're in the mountains, when you're in a field of greens, like you feel uplifted, you feel like you're connected, with God. You feel really back to basics when you're in nature. So there's also incredible symbolism with her, dying in the sea, like coming back to herself and becoming one with herself in the sea. This was like the final act of unification for her. But it was the final ideal, let's put it that way. Like, I'm going to become so one with myself. It's going to happen in the ultimate symbol of connection with the self, which is nature. So she was just on a whole different plane, I think, of thinking and behaving. I mean, nobody else in this is, she was singular in that. And most people, I'm not saying she was wrong or right, but most people are too afraid for in different parts of their lives to venture outside what is happening around them in society. Even if they have inklings, even if they question what's happening, most people don't act on it. She was brave enough to act, right or wrong, selfish, not selfish, totally no plan. She just went into it in the dark. But she also had the guts to do that, I think. Amal, I agree with Sandra. There's a lack of sense of responsibility towards her kids. Life is a package. One can't get everything. Yeah, she wanted everything. She wanted that ideal. Didn't happen. Dina, go ahead.
Well, I thought of the ending in a different way because I saw Edna as a person that was totally overshadowed by society norms and the way her husband treated her and the way other ladies were handling themselves compared to her during, especially this Madame Ratignolle or whatever her name was. Even when the author described her, she described her as a handsome person. So handsome is more of a male description of something rather than a female. So I think she had this rebellious act showing on her, but she couldn't get it out because of the nature of the society she lived in and her marriage, and how her husband was treating her in a very systematic, manly manner, and he didn't really care about how she felt. She cried at night, but he didn't feel that. He always blamed her for certain things, that she's neglecting her kids, that she's not doing that, she's not doing this. And then her awakening put her in a totally different perspective in her mind, and she imagined this ideal romance with Robert and this ideal life in a totally different way, without all the obligations, the big house, the help, the maids, and she wanted to completely shut this out. And then she didn't have time to do that because Robert left her, and he said, because I love you. So he put her back into the he brought her back into the reality of her life, of where she is and of the society where she's in. She tried to go back to where she created the fantasy of rebelling, and that she will be able to live in her rebellious world. That's why I think she went back to the beach place, and just she didn't find anything. So she was empty from inside. That's how I felt. The whole the whole story led me to this. I don't know.
That you get to think that every single interpretation here is correct. That's the whole point of literature. It's what you think about it. It's what makes you feel. Your interpretation is the correct one because it's yours. I just, for me, I feel sorry for her. I love that she was courageous enough. Again, not saying what she did was right or wrong, but just to be able to take that step, all of those steps. And then
Yes.
I feel sad for her that for whatever reason, maybe it just needed more time. Maybe it just needed to see her evolution through, like the evolution of her consciousness. That takes time. Like anybody's evolution of consciousness takes time. So she didn't give it enough time. I would have been very curious to see what she would have done with herself had she allowed herself to live.
I don't think that she felt that society will allow her this, especially after what Robert did, that he left and he said, I'm leaving you because I love you. So she felt that the society and the norms at that time were much, much stronger than, being able as a woman to do that. She would lose everything, I think.
I don't know if divorce was legal or acceptable at that time or not, if that would have been an option to her. I don't know, but I think with her personality, had she been given a chance to maybe just separate from her husband, or maybe just have a conversation with him, give him some credit, give him some benefit of the doubt, like she didn't actually have these conversations with him. She might have been a new example of a Victorian era woman. You had the one who's the mother woman, you had the one who never gets married, the spinster, and then maybe you would have Edna, but because she was that, what they call a disruptor. She disrupted the norms of her society, and disruptors tend to be, at some point, they lead people, they disrupt something that at some point people realize, yeah, this is not working for us anymore. And this disruptor is showing us the way through this. She could have been that. But yeah, I just think her story was too short. She didn't give herself enough time.
Yeah, I think also her husband, we keep blaming it completely on her, but her husband as well, instead of trying to open up a dialogue with her. He went to the doctor, you know, kind of like as if she's a sick person.
Well, but
That's what
exactly.
was in his mind. Yeah.
So thinking independently for the women at that time and completely going against what every single other woman was doing was seen as an illness.
Exactly. So how can she I think she figured it out at the end. She's not going to be able to do what she wanted. So
yeah,
I think that's how I felt about it. Yeah.
She wasn't going to be able to do it. Her only other option was to go back and live a lie, because she had discovered she was living a lie. So, but do we think that she went back with the intention to end her life, or it just happened when she found herself in the water?
I think it
she
just
went back with
happened.
the intent.
I think it just
Wait, hang on. No. Ingi, go first. You said it was?
I think she went there with the intention.
She went with that intention. She knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to think not.
No.
Because I don't like the idea, but I mean, like, so I would choose not to. I believe like she ordered the fish and like, you know, like she did, maybe, I don't know, to get him, like, to get Victor away from the place. I don't know. Or was it like just,
Did take off all her clothes.
yeah, why would you do that? I don't know. Like, I mean, like if you're gonna take your own life, why would you do that? I don't know.
To be as pure and as one with yourself as possible. Nothing is decorating you, nothing is covering you.
Maybe, I don't know. I think she just went for a swim and things went wrong.
Oops. Dina, what did you say something?
Yeah, I don't feel she intended to kind of like drown herself, but she wanted to free herself of all the thoughts that were in her mind. And then she got dragged into, you know, when she went for the swim, she actually felt this is where she feels free of everything.
Yeah.
So she decided then, I think so.
And this is the place where it happened, like her first awakening moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's where she first felt her power. Remember at the
Yeah.
beginning, she was very scared of swimming, very, very scared to go in deep at all. And then suddenly she realized she could. So she felt very, very powerful. And free as a result.
Another thing that grabbed my attention, like in the story, that the more she was, she felt free to express things about herself, the more people saw her more handsome, or like the comments started to be there, you know, like about her, the way she appeared, her appearance, and then the way she looked.
Somebody who's confident in herself, and that confidence shines through. But then, don't you think then they're also very it's very Hippocratic, because what she was showing was not something that they would actually accept for her to actually live her truth. And yet
But
here
no one was condemned. She wasn't condemned in the story. I mean, like,
not yet.
Even being at the summer place and being with Robert the whole time, every single day. I mean, I don't know what was it back then, but I mean, like, even now, I mean, not everyone can do that every single day, being with a man, you know, like every single day, and then go, I don't know what was, the island or something like that. And then when he went away, she was asking her husband, and he was like, "Oh, you miss your friend." And I mean, this is very progressive, actually. Like, I don't know.
But I mean, that was acceptable because he was also accompanying other women that summer, right? He did spend a lot of time with her, but he was also accompanying other women around. It was something sort of he did, and all the women there felt very comfortable with him. But I think there was a comment about the hypocrisy of this society. Like at one point she was saying, you know, she was very, you know, before her awakening, she would sit with these women and, you know, they would tell like sort of very racy stories, you know, romance and things. And she was shocked that these supposedly very prim and proper women could sit around and have these conversations, and then they would tease her that their conversations, would make her blush. So she felt very like she couldn't understand that on the one hand, you're all prim and proper, but you can speak, very daringly and talk about very racy subjects. But then when she sort of embodies that, then she's the one who's improper. So Kate Chopin did touch on that, the hypocrisy of the society in that sense. So yeah, so here you are, you're allowed to spend your whole day with a young man, escorting you here and there around the island. And for whatever reason, that's acceptable, but it's like, where are the boundaries? For me, I was like, where do you draw the line then? Like, how much time can you spend with a young man, whether her or any of the other ladies, and still have that be acceptable? It was a bit strange for me, that part also.
But even the doctor, when he started talking with her, he said something. I mean, I didn't feel like he as well condemned her. Like, and he was just worried about her, about that.
I'm guessing he'd seen it before, given his age and his experience, and probably because he'd seen it before, he saw the full arc. He could probably see that it was a temporary infatuation, maybe sort of a temporary rebellion, and she just needed to talk through it with someone, and then it would calm down. And that's why he kept urging her to do that. But like we keep saying, she never allowed herself the full evolution of the process.
And with Dina, I don't think her husband went to that doctor because she was sick, like in her head. Like, I think that doctor was more, he's more like a psychologist, so he was giving him an insight how to deal with the situation properly. But not that she's sick and she needs intervention. I don't know. I didn't take it that way. But I agree. This couple was weird. They didn't talk with each other.
I mean, you could kind of see where the frustration in her life would be building. So if there's no conversation, I'm gonna say there was probably no sex either. Like, it was a very dry relationship. Like, if he doesn't even talk to her. So whatever it is they might have been having, so she was literally like, there wasn't gonna take much to spark her.
Yeah.
When you have a spouse who just literally treats you as if you are just a continuation of the house. I mean, we can sympathize with her, for sure. I mean, more than anything, I feel sorry for her.
Yeah.
Did you have any, obviously she's the main character, but did you relate to or have any strong reactions to any of the other characters?
The pianist for me again.
Yeah. What about just her freedom to be able to express herself and live her life?
Yeah, I mean, like all of it, and just like getting to create. I think it's just being, as you said, like maybe being a single woman. I did not think of that. I was just thinking maybe like being a creative person. Like people for some reason they respect. Like when you're being like that creative and all this, it comes with like. It's stereotyping, but like how crazy and quirky they can be, and then for some people, some reason people allow it, like
it's accepted.
Yeah.
How about Adele? Did anybody relate to Adele or triggered by her? The perfect mother?
She was being a rabbit.
Sorry?
She reminded me of rabbits. She just wanted to have kids.
She just wanted to have kids, yeah. More kids and more kids.
But she was happy. I felt she was genuinely happy
Yeah, yeah,
with the life she had. She didn't feel confined. She wasn't giving in to what society expected of her.
yeah,
She bought into the whole role wholeheartedly and had no issues with it.
yeah. She was
So,
able to self-actualize in that role.
Exactly.
Yeah, it worked for her.
but what about like being sick and sick and sick? I did not get that part. I mean, was she pretending? Was she real sick? I did not get that part.
At the beginning, at the summer
Every
place?
time they say something about Adele, then she's saying, "Oh, like I'm tired." Um, it was being there. Like they repeated it a lot in the story. But her being not feeling well, and like Edna felt that she was imagining because there was nothing wrong with her. I don't know. I did not get that part. I did not know why it was there.
I'm not sure about that part either.
Angie, do you remember that part?
I remember it at the beginning, but it
Yeah.
doesn't stand out for me later. And I just felt it was more tied to like the pregnancy and just wanting attention more than like a central theme from my recollection, at least.
Okay. They do mention the relationship between her and her husband, like how they talk around the dining table and the conversation.
He was definitely a much more attentive husband. I don't know if he was, really attentive, but in comparison with Edna's husband, definitely a much more attentive husband. You felt like in the descriptions of the homes, you felt like Adele's home was there was more warmth. There was more of a relationship between her and her spouse. There was more connection between her and her husband and the children together. You felt like it was a sort of she also had more kids, but like a bustling home, like when you come into a home and you feel like everybody's there and everybody's connecting. Versus Edna's home felt very stark to me. Very, very cold.
I think I also, sorry, go ahead, Angie.
No, go ahead, please.
I also felt Adele was the perfect woman for that time. I mean, she was a perfect wife, the perfect mother, very pretty, very well, defined as a woman. And so she was the perfect explanation of how a woman should be and how being an appropriate woman is versus Edna or the pianist.
Yes.
She was the perfection of the woman. She was the total, proper of how proper a woman can be at that time.
The embodiment, the feminine embodiment. Yes.
Yeah. And I think she was also part of the ignition of Edna's awakening.
In what way?
I felt so. Because she was very, very, very under the shadow of the society and she was the complete appropriate how a woman should be at that time.
Yeah.
And I think Edna saw that during the summer when, with everything and how she was thinking of her and how the author explained how Adele is versus how Edna is, I think. So I think she was part of the awakening of Edna as well.
So Adele was, she wanted to rebel against the idea of Adele.
Edna, yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I felt so.
So if you were to... yeah, go ahead. Go.
She also felt she had to help her in certain ways, like that. She felt stronger in a way, like she had to go to her when she was sick. She had to, things like that. So I don't know. I felt she's the if I take Edna and Adele as a relationship, so Edna is going to be the man and Adele is going to be the woman, you know,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
as characters.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts about Adele?
Dana, if I can just say something, I'm having a hard time with what you said about you feeling sorry for Edna,
Yeah.
because I don't know how you can possibly feel sorry for him. I think there was such a strong dichotomy between Edna's desire for her extreme liberation,
Yeah.
right? She wasn't just, I'm thinking, okay, she started to want to paint again and her love for art. You can start to branch out gently or slowly. There was this extreme, liberation, awakening, whatever we want to call it, contrasted by طبعا the societal constraints and expectations as a wife and a mother, etc. And so for me, just the two are so far removed from each other.
Yeah.
That I want to say the gall she had to even think that this was going to be possible, or I don't even think she actually knew what she wanted. She just wanted to act on her impulses, right? So I don't necessarily feel sorry for her. I agree with Angie when she said there's no accountability.
Yeah.
For what she did. And then I think actually at the end she basically, like, was stomping her feet and said, if I can't have what I want, I'm leaving. So I don't know, help me understand how you can feel sorry for her.
I feel sorry that she wasn't able to reconcile between her. Remember, I said it's not about it being wrong or right. Not being able to reconcile between her ideal and her reality. Not being able to follow
Yes,
through on that.
okay.
And to
Okay.
find closure with that. Like, right, what parts of my life can I create an ideal around versus the ones that are, solid and I've already committed to, and there's accountability there. I feel sorry that it was either or. I'm either going to have
Yeah.
all of my ideal and I'm going to die for it, or I'm not going to have any of it. That's what I feel sorry
But
for.
doesn't that okay, that makes more sense to me, but also doesn't that come from a lack of maturity on one hand?
Essentially, she was really young. She was still only in her 20s, wasn't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she
Okay.
was really young. We'll never know, why the author decided to just not let her pursue or even there's so many possibilities. I mean, her husband could have been understanding. He could have, because he did go to the doctor. He did see that something was stirring within her. He did see that potentially she needed space, she needed time. So we don't know. Like it might have resolved. He might have had his own awakening. You know how sometimes, when you're in a relationship or you have a husband and wife and one of them sort of starts to go on a journey of self-discovery, sometimes the other one comes on board. I just feel like there were so many options that could have, played out.
Right.
Not just dying. This is why I feel sorry for her.
But
Yeah.
the thing is, she didn't take those options. Yani she tried even in this day and age, after 100 and whatever years later, if someone were to go through such a short journey and throw in the towel after a few months, you'd be surprised. Even back then, back then when it was even more controversial and more out of the norm, for her to decide within such a short time frame, okay, that it's either all or nothing. I'm not going to get anywhere. There's no way for me to go back, and to decide to end things the way she did. Yani I don't know. I'm trying to think of. I think that was the way they portrayed heroines a lot in that time. They were always yani the ones who had some enlightenment to think of something different other than societal norms. بس برضو they're always the victim.
Mm.
No, they either stay trapped in a marriage or they kill themselves. They don't give them room to explore.
Well, when you read sort of, what people write about this book, like the critics and researchers, and they say that as much as Kate Chopin was seen as a early feminist with this work, but a lot of critics will say, but actually no, hers is a cautionary tale for that period of time, that if you go down this path, potentially these are your only choices: death or be ostracized from society. So there
And
have
the
been
thing,
those analyses as well.
even in the black and white movies, the Egyptian movies, they used to take the same ending. Like
Mm.
it was death for the women that decided not to, it was so many stories. Even Ihsan Abdul Quddus, he would choose a different story, but when they embody it, like in the film industry, they would actually kill the
Kill them,
lady at the end.
kill her off. Yeah. That there is no
But
other
I mean, like with Basma, I felt like, even if we agree or don't agree with that character, I mean, like you do feel sorry for a soul that is suffering, regardless if we agree with like how she chose to act or not. It's just like at the end she was not happy, and she was
100%, Sandra, I agree. Yes, you do feel sorry that she's so lost.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
for sure. Yes, I agree with that.
Mm. Do any of you on any level see anything you've struggled with in your life? Can you relate it? Maybe not exactly to what her experience was, but just the concept of an inner struggle. Can any of you relate to that? In your own life experiences, can you see where you had a struggle between the real and the ideal?
Maybe with the kids,
Mm.
like you might think, like you're doing your best and you're just being there, because I think like there was parts in the story at the beginning that she was saying that she was being attentive to the kids, and then the husband was saying that she was not. Maybe sometimes, like as a mother, maybe sometimes I'm on autopilot. Like I do take care of their food, their clothes, and like things like that, and the practices and everything. Like I mean, like on the outside, but do we really get to spend like quality time? Do we actually do the things, arts and crafts and things that they actually do enjoy, and like having fun, and maybe like getting myself and my hands dirty, like in the mud or doing things like that. Maybe it's not that often, so that was one thing that I could maybe relate to, like when you're being true to yourself, and you do discover things about yourself, and like that, it does have an effect on the kids as well, and you're more present with them.
Anybody else? Anybody ever felt a conflict between, fulfilling your role as a mother potentially versus self-actualizing in any other way besides just being a mother, or vice versa? Nobody's had that conflict? Nobody's had the conflict between is being a mom enough? Is being a mother and a wife enough? I mean, I've definitely had this.
Of course.
Yeah. I think I think our generation grew up with a lot of, the feminist ideas, and you get to choose whichever way you want to live your life. You want to be a career woman, you get to do that. You want to be a stay-at-home mom, you get to do that. But I feel like, and then of course you have the more traditional approach, which is just very clear cut, stay at home, maybe not so much career. And I've always felt the conflict of, okay, well, 100%, I feel like I have to be committed to my role as a mother. It's the biggest job, biggest responsibility I'll ever have. So I want to be able to choose that. But I don't want to be made feel guilty about it, because some feminists can make you feel guilty. Like, yes, in theory, you have the choice, but if you don't choose the career, then you've made the wrong choice. So I always felt a conflict when I chose to stay home with my kids, that I didn't choose a career. And then when I chose, after a while, I realized that as much as I love being a mom and giving it my all, it's not enough for me. Like, I couldn't figure out who I was outside of being a mother. So maybe that's why on some level I can relate to Edna. Like, it's not enough. The self-actualization for me didn't happen just by being a mother. I needed something else. And just by having a career is definitely, I know, is not just enough for me. I need to have my role as a mother. So I feel like this is just an ongoing balancing act, really. But at least in this day and age, we're allowed to have that choice. You're allowed to voice, like, it's not considered taboo for you to say, I don't just want to be a mother. I want to be able to do other things with myself. I mean, you really even couldn't say that in Edna's time. Completely taboo. So I feel like this is something that we have to be really aware of, that it's not clear cut. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I really just want to be a stay-at-home mom and do nothing else. And of course, there's nothing wrong with saying I want to be a career woman and do nothing else. Everybody gets to choose. And if you're a little bit in the middle, you get to be in the middle also, without judgment. I think this is the big thing for me, is being made to feel like, with motherhood especially, like, it should be enough. I also started my career really late, and I did get that a lot. Like, you're gonna start your career now at 40, ma خلاص بقى, you've been a mom. Like, just, enjoy the rest of your life. Like, you waited all this time, like, just, focus more on your kids, be more with your kids. So I got that a lot. And I don't know if that's because I waited, 20 years to figure out what I want to be, but I had to figure it out also. I couldn't just be whatever I wanted, because I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I think it's really important to be like how Edna was doing. Like, if she had just gotten to the end of that, before killing herself, she could have figured this out, that there are ways to self-actualize, and there are ways to figure out who you are and to be fulfilled without going to extremes. Layla, yes, and conflict when I resigned to stay home with the kids. And then after a few years, I felt that I need to go back to work once they were older. I enjoyed being with them at that stage and would never do it differently. Still feeling guilty when I'm too tired after work or on weekends. And yes, in the middle, since tend to do things perfectly, either with my family and with work. Yeah, there's always that, the pressure of trying to do it all perfectly. Dina, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had that same conflict because my husband was transferred out of Egypt about 20 years ago, and I was working at that time, and I chose to resign and go with him because we had a family, kids were young, and he was transferred to Saudi Arabia, so it wasn't like an option for me to work there or stuff like that.
Right.
And then when we moved to the US at the beginning, I still didn't have any option to work because of my visa type and stuff. So time just flew by. It's not like I'm regretting that. I actually loved being, spending a lot of time with my kids, a lot of quality time with them, and seeing them growing up now and grown actually to be good people at this point, which is an achievement في
course.
الزمن ده.
Yes.
But I felt, and that's what I told my mom before, because she was, even when I was working and they were kids, when I was in Egypt, she was always telling me like, you need to take care of this more. You need to, you're neglecting your house in this, you're neglecting your kids in this. That's because I'm at work, in the morning until 5 o'clock. And I used to come back and take them to the club and go, spend the whole afternoon with them and stuff. But she still saw me as neglecting certain things from her perspective. So that created still a bit of a conflict inside of me. And I think when we left Egypt, that made the decision maybe easier for me to kind of like, okay, we're leaving, so now I get to resign and stay with the kids, because whatever my mom was saying resonated in my mind. So yeah, and now whenever I decide to kind of like do this because I actually want to do this, sometimes I get this kind of look from either my kids or my husband or my mom or my dad that's weird, you're not doing what you were doing before, or you're not talking the same way that you were talking before, stuff like that. So yeah, so I think it is a conflict that arises for all of us as women, I think.
Amal also said, yes, I always struggled about the decision of giving up my career for my family. I mean, it is the same struggle. I mean, that Edna had, it wasn't over a career, but it was that inner struggle between what we think we should be doing, what we want to be doing.
So I'm not a mom, so I haven't had that struggle, but I have struggled with being the perfect daughter and being the daughter that my parents thought I should be. So they always thought that I should become an academic like my mother. And it took a long time for them to accept that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. And it took me quite some time to admit that to myself and to them. When I went for my master's, I didn't go for my master's because I wanted a master's. It was because it was expected of me, because I did well in school, and that's how you got into the academic track. And it took a very long time because I didn't want to disappoint them ultimately. And I think maybe I'm being harsh on Edna because it wasn't an easy road for me, and it could have been very easy for me to throw in the towel and go back to Alexandria and live with the family and or just pursue an academic career. But I mean, it took a while for them to realize that I'm not as quiet as I used to be. This is not what I wanted to do. It was kind of like a slow and a long process, but you stick with it. If it's something you believe in, if you come to a realization that this is not what you want, and you start seeing what you do want, you stick with it. Obviously, we're in a different era. We didn't live back then, so we don't really know how tough it was for her. But I think that's why, because I was in a slightly similar situation, and I know that it wasn't an easy road. And for all of you ladies as well, saying like from a motherhood perspective, you've all had to struggle as well, and you could have given up and given into societal norms as well, but you didn't.
Yeah. So you're upset she just didn't power through.
Yeah, I just feel, I feel.
A lot of critics will say that Edna's character is also, as much as she might be, setting an example for women as a pioneer, like to break out of the societal norms, but she actually let women down at the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think Kate Chopin was actually telling women in, subtly, take care, if you try to break away, it can end in death. I mean, I'm not a critic, and I haven't studied the novel enough, but I don't really think she was trying to do that. But yes, I do feel that she didn't help women much by having Edna do what she did at the end.
Surrender. It is, I mean, one of the ways you can look at it, she surrendered. She didn't really fight until the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, your point is a very, very significant one. Also, then I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that as also the daughter, right? And whatever expectations were placed on us by our parents, whether or not we were able to live up to those expectations also. So it starts with that, I think. It starts with whatever your parents think that you should be or should become, and then it just kind of gets passed on to the marriage, the relationships. There's a lot, when you think about it, a lot of expectations, a lot of things that if you don't take the time and like Inji did, be really, really disciplined and diligent and patient. And this is like a perfect example of when you're in alignment. We talk about you're in alignment, like this is you. You're not, Inji didn't do it to rebel. She didn't do it. There was a bit of compliance there. Like she went down the master's route. That was definitely compliant because it was like, okay, I'm doing this because they think I should. But at some point you realize my compliance is not serving me. My rebellion is not serving me. What is going to serve me is to stay in alliance and what I need to do and to see that through to the end. I think Edna was way compliant, and then she flipped all the way to rebellious, never being able to find that center for herself.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a similar experience? Being too compliant as a daughter, as a wife, as a mom, or being too rebellious? I think definitely Kate Chopin cautions against the rebellion. So what are you taking away from this book? Regardless of what you feel about Edna, regardless of your personal feelings about her, what, let's say, lesson, if you're going to say there's a lesson that you can take away from this story about, a lesson about self-discovery, or a lesson about freedom, or a lesson about rebellion or relationships, is there an insight or a lesson that you've taken away? No? Amal, it is good. Oh, hang on, Dean. I'm going to read
Can I
that.
say?
One second.
Okay.
It is good to further understand your situation and your needs, but never do an irresponsible, uncalculated move. Yeah, I think the key word here is uncalculated, right? You don't think of the consequences. There's no follow-up, 100%. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, yeah. All her moves are everything was uncalculated with Edna. Agree with that 100%, Emma. Dina, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of the same. Like she went to the extreme. She wanted to change everything very quickly. So kind of she didn't reflect on any of her thoughts. She just took the thought and acted upon it very quickly, like that she loves this Robert, that she wants to move from the house, that she, she wants to stop this, she wants to act this way. She kind of like, it was too extreme. It was too extreme. So I think even if you discover that you kind of like want to change something in your life, you just need to reflect upon it first and see how this will affect not only you, but others as well, since you're, you have other responsibilities. And in her case, she had kids, little kids. She did not reflect on anything. I think so.
Yeah. She believed every single one of her thoughts as the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Sorry. Cat's meowing.
Anybody else want to share final insight or lesson?
I think most things that are worthwhile take time.
Yeah. She didn't give herself the time or space. So
One more thing. Sorry to interrupt you, Dana, but I think she didn't give time to evolve in her own situation. She wanted completely out of the situation. She needed to give herself some time to evolve in her own situation first and see if that is going to work. Maybe talk with her husband, treat her kids in a different way. I don't know, have certain other stuff that may be acceptable by society at that time that would give her a bit of relief, and maybe, her life would move in a better way, not necessarily in the ideal way that's in her head, but in a better way, considering all the circumstances around her. She didn't give herself that at all.
No. She was very much focused on her inner world and followed that, I have to say, blindly, right? Blindly. Like being in tune with yourself is really important, but it is there, that the reality is there. You can't ignore it. So I just feel, and one of the reasons I feel sorry for her, I feel like she could have reinvented herself. She could have used, the ideal that she wanted to reinvent herself instead of just completely rebel against everything. She just didn't have the chance to do that. Final
She
thoughts.
also she was different with her dad. I mean, like, I felt like it's actually another part of the story. Like, I mean, it was a completely different story there. But more information was needed. Like, I mean, she's trying to be a good daughter and all, but like, no emotions there. I don't know.
Yeah. It feels like she just generally didn't have, from the prominent male figures in her life, real emotion there or real connection there. And I think that was the spark for it all, because she did find it with Robert. And it just sort of, spiraled her into, what could be and what she'd been missing out on, without taking a lot of personal responsibility. Because remember at the beginning, it did say, she didn't have a lot of friends when she was in school, but maybe that was, the description was that maybe that was partly her fault as well. So she doesn't really ever take responsibility for the fact that it wasn't a very fiery, emotional relationship with her husband. Well, we don't know. How were you with him? very straightforward with her father. She didn't marry him for love. We don't know why necessarily. So she doesn't take responsibility for the fact that she doesn't have passion and love in her life. She just blames it all on her husband. Again, this for me is like would have been a great chance for her to reevaluate and reinvent, but 'twas not to be.
I think also it's even though self-actualization is about the self, it doesn't necessarily mean becoming selfish.
Oh no, no, not at all.
And yeah, and even in the process of achieving self-actualization, it doesn't mean you ignore those around you because they are very much a part of that. You don't live on an island ultimately. I mean, you're still part of society. And I think what I mean, it looks like she tried to do things a bit on her own, but I think a learning, because I think even these days, like a lot of people make that mistake.
Of
To come into my own, it means I have to only focus on myself, and that can become it can mean that that person becomes selfish almost.
Well, unfortunately, that message, if you look at that message from sort of influencers, gurus, like they do say that. They do say become selfish in your process, right? Of reinventing yourself and like be ruthless with who you allow into your life and who you give your energy to. So unfortunately, there is, even today, there is that message. I don't agree with it. I 100% don't believe that self-actualization means being selfish to the degree
Yeah,
that you exclude people or hurt people. I think it means
exactly.
selfish that you prioritize yourself when you need to,
Mhm.
within your process of evolution, but not to the exclusion or harm or disrespect uh, of others. But there is that message, unfortunately. But yeah, I agree with you.
Mm.
Layla, I didn't understand why she didn't go to her sister's wedding just to rebel. Makes me wonder, yeah, how was her relationship with her sister? Yeah, I mean, for all her, needing this passion and love and sexual liberation, I don't think she was a very kind daughter or sibling or wife. I really don't think so. I think that was just that incident is to give us insight into her character. She was actually selfish. Yeah. Too occupied with herself. Yeah. All right, ladies. Any other final thoughts about Edna and her journey and her end? Sandra, it could be a phase, and it probably was. Yeah, this is what we're saying. And I think in 100%, this would have been a phase that potentially could have served her really well. This could have been, if you've ever read about, like the dark night of the soul, this could have been, where she was going to delve deep into herself and see and look at her life and come out at the end of it. But she was too rash, too rash.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes I become too selfish as well. Like I focus on myself, whatever area I'm working on it, and not intentionally, but I ignore what other people like, obligations and things like that because I do not feel like doing it at the moment. So I mean, like I do understand that part because I can relate.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you told us about that last time. It was in the call, right? Or was it in
No, but hopefully that's not a phase. Hopefully this is like
Yeah, but you don't have any intentions of hurting anyone, right? Your intentions for that were because you wanted to spend more time with your family. It wasn't just
Yes.
about I don't want to see people. It was about you felt that there was a, a threat to the quality time that you had with your little nuclear family, right? You felt like too
Mm.
much energy was being given away to family obligations, family get-togethers. So that has a very direct purpose and intention, which is important for you as a mother and as a wife. So yeah, I think that's
No, but with that, I don't feel like this is a different story for me because I don't feel like I don't feel guilty about it, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah, and you
But
shouldn't.
uh, but another part is sometimes, for example, in the morning, why don't you come in and just have coffee with us and or have breakfast with us like somewhere? And I don't feel like I want to do it, like and even like my husband, like it's like how could you like how can you be like saying no? He
Mm.
doesn't get it. But like for me, it's like I don't want it. I do not want to do it.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes yes, it might be selfish because like like that other person, for example, I might like they might need a change. So sometimes I would do it, but other times like it's like I'm sorry, I do not want to do it, and I will not.
Yeah. So being in alignment right there, right? It's being very, very honest about what fills you up and what doesn't. Guilt-free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right, ladies. I'm just going to repeat what I said at the beginning of the call for those of you who came on later. A few changes to the schedule. Next week, I've rescheduled the call from Monday to Sunday because Monday is my travel day. So our call is going to be Sunday at 5 p.m. instead of Monday. And then our calls the week after, when it's going to be in March in Ramadan anyway, will be at 1 p.m. Cairo time. And then next week, what are we today? Monday. Yeah, next week. So Sunday, I will not be sharing a new module for that week. So we'll use next week as sort of a catch-up week, integration week for anybody who feels behind. They need more time to review what we've done so far. It can be a great opportunity in that week to post like your questions on the group. You need anything clarified, you need anything expanded on, anything that we've done so far from January up until this point. So next week, no new material. We will just wrap up our conversations around relationships. And then the week after that, you will get, because it'll also be Ramadan, if our month on spirituality does fall in Ramadan, although spirituality is it's not it was just a coincidence that it ended up being in Ramadan. It's about all spirituality. And then we'll have our book, which is East of Eden on March 3rd. All right, ladies, please let me know. Some of you, as I said at the beginning of the call, some of you have been reaching out, specific questions about yourself. I've been getting a lot of questions about health, symptoms. So if you have any of those kinds of questions and maybe you feel like we haven't gotten to that part of the program, but that is a concern, please reach out to me because this is always ongoing. And then, of course, if you need explanations, elaborations, things maybe you might not want to share in the group, definitely by all means message me privately. Things you have no problem sharing on the group, put it on the group because if one of you has a question, probably some of you have similar or the same question, then I can help everybody by answering on the group. All right. Thank you for another great call, ladies. And I will see you all again on Sunday at 5 p.m., please.
Donna, can I ask you to please explain the exercises that you asked because I read them but I didn't get them fully. So do you mind if
This week?
this week and last week, like the affirmation the mirror one and the conversation. So I didn't get the conversation, is it just between me and myself or like with
Oh.
someone and actually
The conversations between you and someone. So it could be anybody.
I was just making sure.
Yeah, between you and
Okay, I
someone.
did that.
Could
Okay,
be
then I did it.
you know,
Okay.
spouse, a parent, a significant relationship. Yeah. A boss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and the mirror thing is just affirmation.
That's just you in the mirror. Yeah. This one is yeah, can feel very awkward to do it. It can feel funny. It can feel like it'll triggering. You might feel like, resistance to doing it because we're just not used to talking to ourselves face to face like that and saying those kinds of things to ourselves. But it's a great practice in learning how to speak to yourself the way that you would speak to anybody else that you love and care about.
I don't really have anything to say to myself in the mirror, but like, so I'll okay, I'll try.
I give you, prompts. I give you prompts, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
See, right there was a bit of resistance, right? Because
Yeah, of course, yeah.
right. So anytime we hit resistance, that means that there's like we're at like a sort of a cliff, and we don't want to do it. But beyond that is where you're going to see something shift.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Amal, Dana, please, can you revisit the quantity of reading and the type of books we are reading in Ramadan? There's only the quantity is the same. I don't want to keep reshuffling the schedule, ladies. Okay, it's one book every 2 weeks. I'm not going to shuffle that, and I don't want to undo the whole schedule just because, some people are on track with their reading. So it's not fair for the ladies who are on track, and some ladies are reading ahead to sort of undo that for them as well. So all it requires, ladies, and it's actually not a lot of time. You can divide it up with the longer books anyway, right? You can do 30 minutes in the morning and you can do 30 minutes in the evening. That's not a lot of time. If you're watching Netflix, if you're scrolling Facebook, if you're on Instagram, then you have time. You have time to do that, all right? And part of this process is getting yourself into the practice, getting yourself into the habit of creation, of not being so much in consumer mode, but in creator mode, of downtime, of being in your feminine energy. So if we keep making excuses for, well, we have Ramadan or the book is too long, or there's always going to be some excuse. I could shift the schedule, but there will always be some excuse not to do something. Our lives are never lined up, perfectly. We have to work with what we've got. We have to create the time. We have to make the things that we need to do a priority, because the reality is everything is always going to be messed up and something is always going to come up to throw you off. So are you going to just live in a reactive way, or are you going to become proactive so that you can create the life you want to live? Or are you just always just following and just, reacting to stressors and triggers and events and people? At some point, you need to say, right, I'm going to prioritize what I need to do for myself. A little bit selfish here, but not in a bad way. So I'm going to prioritize my reading time. I'm going to if it means, you don't go out for a coffee, or you don't go out for suhoor, or you don't go out for a fatar, maybe that's what it requires for you to do in Ramadan. The way you prioritize anything else, you need to start to learn to prioritize the things that you need to do so that you can look back and say, I've lived a very fulfilling life. I didn't waste time. I didn't make excuses. I was able to do the things that I need to do for myself when I needed to do them, guilt-free. All right, ladies? Wonderful. Have a wonderful rest of your evening or rest of your day, and I will see you all again next week. Bye, ladies.